Charlie and the Chocolate Factory 查理和巧克力工厂 by Roald Dahl 这本书是讲有一个巧克力工厂非常有名，这个巧克力工厂做出的巧克力比世界其他的任何工厂做的都好吃。这个巧克力工厂的主人是 Mr. Willy Wonka， 就叫 Mr. Wonka。然而这个工厂最神秘的地方是一年四季都看不见任何人进去和任何人出去，10米高的大铁门从来也没开过一次。在继续读之前，我们先认识一下查理的家庭。These two very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket.Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these two very old people are the father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgiana. This is Mr. Bucket. This is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. Bucket and Mrs. Bucket have a very small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. This is Charlie.How do you do? How do you do? And how do you do again? He is pleased to meet you. 查理是这本书的主人公，他非常喜欢巧克力，但是不幸的是，他每年只能吃上一次巧克力，而那一天就是他的生日，因为他的家庭非常非常穷。The whole of his family,The 6 grown-ups, count them, and little Charlie Bucket lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only one bed.The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. They were so tired that they never got out of it. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room, upon mattresses on the floor. In the summertime, this wasn't too bad, but in the winter, freezing cold drafts blew across the room all night long, and it was awful. And they were so poor that they never even got the chance to buy even a better house or even another bed. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them, the 2 old grandfathers, the 2 old grandmothers, Charlie's father, Charlie's mother, and especially little Charlie himself went about from morning till night with a horrible empty feeling in their tummies. 有一天晚上 Mr. Bucket 查理的爸爸拿了回家一个报纸，报纸上有一条新闻说 Mr. Wonka 的巧克力工厂要开放了， Mr. Wonka 要请5个孩子，世界上只请5个孩子来参观他的巧克力工厂，并且知道他所有的做巧克力的秘密。 Mr. Wonka 往5块巧克力的包装里塞了5张金色的纸，如果谁找到了这张金色的纸，那么他就可以在2月1号参观旺卡的巧克力工厂。查理现在刚刚想起来，他的生日不久就要到了。 Happy birthday! cried the 4 old grandparents as Charlie came to their room early the next morning. Charlie smiled nervously and sat down on the edge of the bed. He was holding his present, his only present, very carefully in his 2 hands. Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudgemallow Delight, it said on the wrapper. The 4 old people two at either end of the bed, propped themselves up on their pillows, and stared with obnoxious eyes at the candy bar in Charlie's hands. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket came in and stood at the foot of the bed, watching Charlie. The room became silent. Everybody was waiting now for Charlie to start opening his present. Charlie looked down at the candy bar. He ran his fingers slowly back and forth along the length of it, stroking it lovingly, and the shiny paper wrapper made little sharp crackly noises in the quiet room. Then Mrs. Bucket said gently, "You mustn't be too disappointed, my darling, if you don't find what you're looking for underneath that wrapper. You can't really expect to be as lucky as that." "She's quite right," Mr. Bucket said. Charlie didn't say anything. "After all," Grandma Josephine said, "in the whole wide world, there are only 3 tickets left to be found." "The thing to remember," Grandma Georgina said, "is that whatever happens, you'll still have the bar of candy. Wonka's Whipple Scrumptious Fudgemallow Delight," cried Grandpa George. "It's the best of them all. You'll just love it." "Yes," Charlie whispered. "I know. Just forget all about those golden tickets and enjoy the candy," Grandpa Joe said. "Why don't you do that?" They all knew it was too ridiculous to expect this one poor little candy bar to have a magic ticket inside it. And they were trying as gently and as kindly as they could to prepare Charlie for the disappointment. But there was one other thing that the grown-ups also knew, and it was this, that however small the chance might be of striking lucky, the chance was there. The chance had to be there. This particular candy bar had as much chance as any other of having a golden ticket after all. And that was why all the grandparents and parents in this room was actually just as tense and excited as Charlie himself was, although they were pretending to be very calm. "You better go ahead and open it up, or you'll be late for school," Grandpa Joe said. "You might as well get it over with," Grandpa George said. "Open it, my dear," Grandma Georgina said. "Please open it. You're making me jumpy." Very slowly, Charlie's fingers began to tear open one small corner of the wrapping paper. The old people in the bed all leaned forward, craning their shaggy necks. Then suddenly, as though he couldn't bear the suspense any longer, Charlie tore the wrapper right down the middle, and onto his lap there fell a light brown, creamy-colored chocolate candy bar. There was no sign of a golden ticket anywhere. "Well, that's that," said Grandpa Joe brightly. "It's just what we expected." Charlie looked up. 4 kind old faces was watching him intently from the bed. He smiled at them, a small sad smile, and then shrugged his shoulders and picked up the candy bar and held it up to his mother and said, "Here, Mother, have a bit. We'll share it. I want everybody to taste it." "Certainly not," his mother said. 有一天，查理去学校的时候，他在雪地里面走着，他突然看到地上有一张纸，绿色的一种纸。他弯着腰看了看，发现这是1块钱的纸币。他四处看了看，是不是有人刚把它不小心掉了？ 不，肯定不是。那张钞票好像在那儿被埋住了。他把那张钞票拿起来，哇，一张整个的1块钱钞票呀！他四处再看了看，他旁边就有一个商店，他准备去买巧克力去，然后再把剩下的钱给他的妈妈。他进店里后，买了1块巧克力，他慢慢的把它打开，结果他却找到金票了。然后他立刻跑回家，告诉他的爸爸妈妈，大家都高高兴兴的在庆祝。然而2月1号就是明天了，他们得赶紧准备啊。金票上写着 Greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket, from Mr. Willy Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you.Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for 1 whole day. You and all others who are lucky enough to find my golden tickets. I, Willy Wonka myself, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything there is to see.And afterwards, when it is time to leave, you will be escorted home by a procession of large trucks. These trucks, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious establos to last you and your entire household for many years. If at any time thereafter you should run out of supplies, you have only to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket.And I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you will be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting thing that will happen on the day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you.And for all my beloved golden ticket holders, mystic and marvelous surprises that will entrance, delight, intrigue, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see. And now, here are your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day.In the month of February. On this day, and on no other, you must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late, and you are allowed to bring with you either 1 or 2 members of your own family to look after you and to ensure you don't get into mischief. One more thing. Be certain to have this ticket with you.Otherwise, you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. 第2天，查理到了巧克力工厂以后，已经有4个其他的小孩在那等着。他们在那儿等了一会儿 ，Mr. Wonka 出来了。他长得很怪，他穿的衣服也很怪。Mr. Wonka was standing all alone just inside the open gates of the factory.And what an extraordinary little man he was. He had a black top hat on his head. He wore a tailcoat made of a beautiful plum-colored velvet. His trousers were bottle green. His gloves were pearly gray, and in one hand he carried a fine gold-topped walking cane. Covering his chin, there was a small, neat, pointed black beard, a goatee.And his eyes were most marvelously bright. They seemed to be sparkling and twinkling at you all the time. The whole face, in fact, was alight with fun and laughter. 他们进巧克力工厂以后，他们看到了巧克力工厂就像迷宫一样，很大。如果走丢了，就永远也找不出去了。他们走了很长很长时间。 Mr. Wonka 一直到介绍他的巧克力工厂。终于，他们到了一扇大门。这个大门上写着 The Chocolate Room， 巧克力屋。他们把门打开了，然后他们进了这个屋子以后，发现了一座巧克力山谷。也不全是巧克力山谷，但是这座山谷里面的所有的东西都是能吃的。比如说，地上的草是一种薄荷，而山谷里面有一条河是棕色的巧克力。An important room, this! cried Mr. Wonka, taking a bunch of keys from his pocket.And slipping one into the keyhole of the door. This is the nerve center of the whole factory, the heart of the whole business. And so beautiful. I insist upon my rooms being beautiful. I can't abide ugliness in factories. In we go then. But do be careful, my dear children. Don't lose your heads. Don't get overexcited.Keep very calm. Mr. Wonka opened the door. 5 children and 9 grown-ups pushed their way in. And oh, what an amazing sight it was that now met their eyes. They were looking down upon a lovely valley. There were green meadows on either side of the valley, and along the bottom of it, there flowed a great brown river.What is more, there was a tremendous waterfall halfway along the river, a steep cliff over which the water curled and rolled in a solid sheet, then went crashing down into a boiling, churning whirlpool of froth and spray. Below the waterfall, and this was the most astonishing sight of all, a whole mass of enormous glass pipes.were dangling down into the river from somewhere high up in the ceiling. They were really enormous, those pipes. There must have been a dozen of them at least. And they were sucking up the brownish muddy water from the river and carrying it to goodness knows where. And because they were made of glass, you could see the liquid flowing and bubbling along inside them.And above the noise of the waterfall, you could hear the never-ending sucking sound of the pipes as they did their work. Graceful trees and bushes were growing along the river banks, weeping willows and alders and tall clumps of rhododendrons with their pink and red and mauve blossoms. In the meadows there were thousands of buttercups. There! cried Mr. Wonka.Dancing up and down and pointing his gold-topped cane at the great brown river. It's all chocolate. Every drop of that river is hot melted chocolate of the finest quality, the very finest quality. There's enough chocolate in here to fill every bathtub in the entire country, and all the swimming pools as well. Isn't it terrific?And just look at my pipes. They suck up the chocolate and carry it away to all the other rooms in the factory where chocolate is needed. Thousands of gallons an hour, my dear children. Thousands and thousands of gallons. The children and their parents were too flabbergasted to speak. They were staggered. They were dumbfounded. They were bewildered and dazzled.They were completely bowled over the hugeness of the whole thing. They simply stood and stared. The waterfall is most important, Mr. Wonka went on. It mixes the chocolate. It churns it up. It pounds it and beats it. It makes it light and frosty. No other factory in the world mixes its chocolate by waterfall.But it's the only way to do it properly. The only way. And do you like my trees? He cried, pointing with the stick. And my lovely bushes? Don't you think they look pretty? I told you I hated ugliness. And of course, they are all edible, all made of something different and delicious. And do you like my meadows? Do you like my grass and my buttercups? The grass you are standing on, my dear little ones, is made of a new kind of soft minty sugar I've just invented. I call it swidge. Try a blade, please do. It's delectable. Automatically, everybody bent down and picked one blade of grass. Everybody, except Augustus Gloop, who took a big handful. And Violet Beauregard, before tasting her blade of grass, took the piece of world record-breaking chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it carefully behind her ear. "Isn't it wonderful?" whispered Charlie. "Hasn't it got a wonderful taste, Grandpa?" "I could eat the whole field," said Grandpa Joe, grinning with delight. "I could go around on all fours like a cow and eat every single blade of grass in the field." "Try a buttercup," cried Mr. Wonka. "They're even nicer." 查理和他的爷爷还有其他的孩子正在看这些惊人的植物的时候，有个女孩在河对面看到了几个小人，这些小人叫 Oompa Loompa。 但是当大家都在看小人的时候，刚才 Augustus Gloop 那个贪吃的小孩偷偷地走到了河边，并且开始喝巧克力了。 Augustus! shouted Mr. Gloop. "Augustus, sweetheart, I don't think you had better do that." Augustus Gloop, as you might have guessed, had quietly sneaked down to the river, and now he was kneeling on the riverbank, scooping hot, melted chocolate into his mouth as fast as he could. When Mr. Wonka turned round and saw what Augustus Gloop was doing, he cried out, "Oh, no! Please, Augustus, please! I beg you not to do that! My chocolate must not be touched by human hands!" "Augustus!" called out Mrs. Gloop. "Didn't you hear what the man said? Come away from that river at once!" "This stuff is terrific!" said Augustus, taking not the slightest notice of her mother and or Mr. Wonka. "Oh boy, I need a bucket to drink it properly." "Augustus!" cried Mr. Wonka, hopping up and down and waggling his stick in the air. "You must come away! You are dirtying my chocolate!" "Augustus!" cried Mr. Gloop. "Augustus!" cried Mrs. Gloop. But Augustus was deaf to everything except the call of his enormous stomach. He was now lying full length on the ground, with his head far out over the river, lapping up the chocolate like a dog. "Augustus!" shouted Mrs. Gloop. "You'll be giving that nasty cold of yours to about 1,000,000 people all over the country." "Be careful, Augustus!" shouted Mr. Gloop. "You're leaning too far out." Mr. Gloop was absolutely right. For suddenly there was a shriek and then a splash, and then into the river went Augustus Gloop, and in 1 second he had disappeared under the brown surface. "Save him!" screamed Mrs. Gloop, going white in the face, and waving her umbrella about. "He'll drown! He can't swim a yard! Save him! Save him!" "Good heavens, woman!" said Mr. Gloop. "I'm not diving in there. I've got my best suit on." Augustus Gloop's face came up again to the surface, painted brown with chocolate. "Help! Help! Help!" he yelled. "Fish me out!" "Don't just stand there!" Mrs. Gloop screamed at Mr. Gloop. "Do something!" "I am doing something," said Mr. Gloop, was now taking off his jacket and getting ready to dive into the chocolate. But while he was doing this, the wretched boy was being sucked closer and closer towards the mouth of one of the great pipes that was dangling down into the river. Then all at once, the powerful suction took hold of him completely, and he was pulled under the surface and then into the mouth of the pipe. The crowd on the riverbank waited breathlessly to see where he would come out. "There he goes!" somebody shouted, pointing upwards. And sure enough, because the pipe was made of glass, Augustus Gloop could clearly be seen shooting up inside it, headfirst like a torpedo. "Help! Murder! Police!" screamed Mrs. Gloop. "Augustus, come back at once! Where are you going?" Augustus Gloop 和他们的家长走了以后 Mr. Wonka 说 "Off we go!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Hurry up, everybody! Follow me to the next room. And please don't worry about Augustus Gloop. He's bound to come out in the wash. They always do. We shall have to make the next part of the journey by boat. Here she comes! Look!" A steamy mist was rising up now from the great warm chocolate river. And out of the mist there appeared suddenly a most fantastic pink boat. It was a large open rowboat, with a tall front and a tall back, like a Viking boat of old, and it was of a shining, sparkling, glistening pink color that the whole thing looked as though it was made of bright pink glass. There were many oars on either side of it. As the boat came closer, the watchers on the river bank could see that the oars was being pulled by masses of Oompa-Loompas, at least 10 of them to each oar. "This is my private yacht!" cried Mr. Wonka, beaming with pleasure. "I made her by hollowing out an enormous boiled sweet. Isn't she beautiful? How she comes out cuddling through the river." The gleaming pink boiled sweet boat glided up to the riverbank. 100 Oompa-Loompas rested on their oars and stared up at the visitors. Then, suddenly, for some reason best known to themselves, they all burst into shrieks of laughter. "What's so funny?" asked Violet Beauregard. "Oh, don't worry about them," cried Mr. Wonka. "They're always laughing. They think everyone's a colossal joke. Jump into the boat, all of you. Come on, hurry up!" 他们上船了以后，进了一道黑暗的隧道。这个隧道里面很黑很黑。Mr. Wonka 说：“把灯开开。”然后呢，他们就看到了，他们四周都有红色的和黑色的大门。每个门上都写着不同的东西。"Look, Grandpa!" cried Charlie. "There's a door in the wall." It was a green door, and it was set into the wall of the tunnel, just above the level of the river. As they flashed past it, there was just enough time to read the writing on the door. "Storeroom number 54, it said. "All the creams. Dairy cream, whipped cream, violet cream, coffee cream, pineapple cream, vanilla cream, and hair cream." "Hair cream?" cried Mike TV. "You don't use hair cream?" "Row on!" shouted Mr. Wonka. "There's no time to answer silly questions." They streaked past a black door. "Storeroom number 71, it said on it. "Whips, all shapes and sizes." "Whips!" cried Veruca Salt. "What on earth do you use whips for?" "For whipping cream, of course," said Mr. Wonka. "How can you whip cream without whips?" "Whipped cream isn't whipped cream at all unless it's been whipped with whips, just as a poached egg isn't a poached egg unless it's been stolen from the woods in the dead of night. Row on, please!" They passed a yellow door on which it said, "Storeroom number 77. All the beans, cocoa beans, coffee beans, jelly beans, and has-beens." "Has-beens?" cried Violet Beauregard. "You're one yourself," said Mr. Wonka. "There's no time for arguing. Press on, But 5 seconds later, when a bright red door came into sight ahead, he suddenly waved his gold-topped cane in the air and shouted, "Stop the boat!" The Oompa-Loompas guided the boat alongside the red door. On the door it said, "Inventing Room, Private, Keep Out." Mr. Wonka took a key from his pocket, leaned over the side of the boat, and put the key in the keyhole. "This is the most important room in the entire factory," he said. "All my most secret new inventions are cooking and shimmering in here. Old Fickle Grubber will give his front teeth to be allowed inside just for 3 minutes. So would Prawn-Nose and Slugworth and all the other rotten chocolate makers. But now, listen to me. I want no messing about when you go in. No touching, no meddling, and no tasting. Is that agreed?" "Yes, yes," the children cried. "We won't touch a thing." Up to now, nobody else, not even an Oompa-Loompa, has ever been allowed in here. He opened the door and stepped out of the boat into the room. The 4 children and their parents all scrambled after him. "Don't touch!" shouted Mr. Wonka, "and don't knock anything over." 现在他们进了 Mr. Wonka 的发明屋，然后他们会在里面看到一些非常有趣和不可思议的东西。Charlie Bucket started around the gigantic room in which he now found himself. The place was like a witch's chicken. All about him, black metal pots were boiling and bubbling on huge stoves, and kettles were hissing and pans were sizzling, and strange iron machines were clanking and spluttering, and there were pipes running all over the ceiling and walls, and the whole place was filled with smoke and steam and delicious rich smells. Mr. Wonka himself had suddenly become even more excited than usual, and anyone could see that this was the room he loved best of all. He was hopping about among the saucepans and machines like a child among his Christmas presents, not knowing which thing to look at first. He lifted the lid from a huge pot and took a sniff. Then he rushed over and dipped a finger into a barrel of stick yellow stuff and had a taste. And then he skipped across to one of the machines and turned half a dozen knobs this way and that. Then he peered anxiously through the glass door of a gigantic oven, rubbing his hands and cackling with delight at what he saw inside. Then he ran over to another machine, a small shiny affair that kept going pop, 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 pop. And every time it went pop, a large green marble dropped out of it into a basket on the floor. At least it looked like a marble. "Everlasting gobstoppers," cried Mr. Wonka proudly. "They're completely new. I am inventing them for the children who are given very little pocket money. You can put an everlasting gobstopper in your mouth, and you can suck it and 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 suck it, and it will never get any smaller." "It's like gum!" cried Violet Beauregard. "It is not like gum," Mr. Wonka said. "Gum is for chewing, and if you tried chewing one of these gobstoppers here, you break your teeth off. But they taste terrific. And they change color once a week, and they never get smaller. They never disappear. Never. At least I don't think they do. There's one of them being tested this very moment in the testing room next door. An Oompa-Loompa is sucking it. He's been sucking it for very nearly a year now, without stopping, and it's just as good as ever. Now, over here," Mr. Wonka went on, skipping excitedly across the room to the opposite wall. "Over here, I am inventing a completely new line in toffees." He stopped beside a large saucepan. The saucepan was full of thick, gooey, purplish treacle, boiling and bubbling. By standing on his toes, little Charlie could just see inside it. "That's hair toffee," cried Mr. Wonka. "You just eat one tiny bit of that, and in exactly half an hour, a brand new, luscious, thick, silky, beautiful crop of hair will start growing all over the top of your head, and a mustache, and a beard." "A beard!" cried Veruca Salt. "Who wants a beard, for heaven's sake?" "It could suit you very well," said Mr. Wonka, "but unfortunately the mixture is not quite right yet. I've got it too strong. It works too well. I tried it on an Oompa-Loompa yesterday in the testing room, and immediately a huge beard started shooting out of his chin, and the beard grew so fast that soon it was trailing all over the floor in a thick, hairy carpet. It was growing faster than we could cut it. In the end, we had to use a lawnmower to keep it in check. But I'll get the mixture right soon, and then when I do, then there will be no excuse anymore for little boys and girls going about with bald heads." "But Mr. Wonka," said Mike TV, "little boys and girls never do go about with—" "Don't argue, my dear child. Don't argue, please," cried Mr. Wonka. "It's such a waste of precious time. Now, over here, if you will step this way, I will show you something that I'm terrifically proud of. Oh, do be careful. Don't knock anything over. Stand back." 他们看到了一座巨大的机器在发出的声。Mr. Wonka 来了以后，告诉大家，这是伟大的口香糖机。他摁了几个按钮，然后过了1分钟以后，一个小门打开了。这个机器上的小门里面有一片灰色的口香糖。Mr. Wonka 告诉他们，这是一块晚餐口香糖，一放在嘴里，一开始嚼，就可以感觉到西红柿汤在你的喉咙里，也可以感觉到炸牛排和蓝莓派。然而 Violet Beauregard 这个很喜欢嚼口香糖的女孩，把那块口香糖放在自己嘴里就开始嚼。但是呢，她品尝到蓝莓汤那一段的时候，她的身体开始膨胀，她的脸开始变蓝，就像蓝莓一样。然后 Oompa-Loompa 们把这个小孩去了果汁屋，果汁屋里面有一台巨大的机器，他们把它放进机器里面，然后这个机器就开始挤它，把它的汁都挤出来。Well, well, well, sighed Mr. Willy Wonka. Two naughty little children gone. Two good little children left. I think we'd better get out of this room quickly before we lose anyone else. But Mr. Wonka, asked Charlie Bucket anxiously, will Violet Beauregard ever be all right again, or will she always be a blueberry? They'll de-juice her in no time flat, declared Mr. Wonka. They'll roll her into the de-juicing machine, and she'll come out just as thin as a wire. But will she be purple all over? Asked Charlie. She'll be blue, cried Mr. Wonka. A fine, rich blue color from head to toe. But there you are. That's what comes from chewing disgusting gum all day long. 在下一个屋子里面，他们并没有停留，但是 Mr. Wonka 说，这里面有好多松鼠，而且这些松鼠都在包榛子。用松鼠是因为只有松鼠才能把榛子完整的弄出来，不能用人，因为 Mr. Wonka 已经把那些人都开了，而不能用 Oompa-Loompa， 因为他们永远不能把榛子一块弄下来，只有松鼠可以。所以 Mr. Wonka 有好多松鼠在那儿。但是 Veruca Salt 那个想要什么都有的女孩说，我要松鼠，然后她不顾一切冲进去，但是那里面有100只松鼠，25只抓住了她的左腿，25只抓住了她的右腿，25只抓住了 他的左胳膊，24只抓住了他的右胳膊，剩下的一个跳到了他的肩膀上，而且开始敲他的脑袋。他在检查这是不是一块里面没有针子的坏了的针子壳，但是结果它是，所以这些松鼠把它扔进了垃圾管里。这个管子要去底下的一个房间被昂帕朗帕们检查，他掉进去里面，他的父母进去救他，但是他们也被松鼠推进去了。哈 I've never seen anything like it, cried Mr. Wonka. The children are disappearing like rabbits, but you mustn't worry about it. They'll all come out in the wash. Mr. Wonka looked at the little group that stood beside him in the corridor. There were only 2 children left now, Mike TV and Charlie Bucket, and there were 3 grown-ups, Mr. and Mrs. TV and Grandpa Joe. 然后他们进了一个大玻璃电梯里面，这有好多按钮，3面墙上都有按钮，天花板上和地上都有。Mr. Wonka 告诉他们，这不是正常的上下电梯，这个也可以走左右，也可以走前后，什么方向都可以走。这些按钮旁边都有小标牌，上面都写着 Choose a button, said Mr. Wonka. The 2 children may press 1 button each, so take your pick. Hurry up! In every room, something delicious and wonderful is being made. Quickly, Charlie started reading some of the labels alongside the buttons. The Rock Candy Mine, 10,000 feet deep, it said on one. Coconut ice skating rinks, it said on another. Then, strawberry juice water pistols. Toffee apple trees for planting out in your garden, all sizes. Exploding candy for your enemies. Luminous lollies for eating in bed at night. Mint jujubes for the boy next door. They'll give him green teeth for a month. Cavity-filling caramels. No more dentists. Stickjaw for talkative parents. Wriggle sweets that wriggle delightfully in your tummy after swallowing. Invisible chocolate bars for eating in class. Candy-coated pencils for sucking. Fizzy lemonade swimming pools. Magic hand fudge. When you hold it in your hand, you taste it in your mouth. Rainbow drops. Suck them and you can spit in 6 different colors. Come on, cried Mr. Wonka. We can't wait all day. Isn't there a television room in all this lot? Asked Mike TV. Certainly there's a television room, Mr. Wonka said. That button over there. He pointed with his finger. Everybody looked. Television chocolate, it said on the tiny label beside the button. 查理读完了电梯里面的按钮旁边的标牌以后， Mike TV 就问 Mr. Wonka 有没有电视屋，因为他非常喜欢电视，所以他就要了电视屋。然后 Mr. Wonka 回答说他有电视屋。好，现在说 Isn't there a television room in this lot? Asked Mike TV. 这就是 Mike TV 问 Mr. Wonka 有没有 TV 屋。Certainly there's a television room, Mr. Wonka said. That button over there. He pointed with his finger. Everybody looked. Television chocolate, it said on the tiny label beside the button. Whoopee! Shouted Mike TV. That's for me. He stuck out his thumb and pressed the button. Instantly, there was a tremendous whizzing noise. The doors clanged shut, and the elevator leaped away as though it had been stung by a wasp. 然后他们现在去 Television Chocolate 那个屋子了，咱们看看里面有什么啊。在 Television 巧克力 Room 进去了以后，看起来很亮。Mr. Wonka 给了大家墨镜，然后他们看到了一台电视机，一台很大的电视机，一台很大的摄像头用来录影，还有一些 Oompa Loompa， 还有一块巨大的地毯那么大的巧克力。 Mr. Wonka 告诉大家，这些 Oompa Loompa 都穿着宇航服，因为这个摄影机是很危险的。这个摄影机把什么拍下来，它就会把那个东西撕成百万、千万、亿万的数量的小片片，然后这些小片片在空中，然后他们都到电视的里面，然后在电视里面有一个程序把那些小块块都重新拼起来。然后它就显示在电视屏幕上了，而且这个电视屏幕上巧克力不是一般的图片，而是一个可以拿出来可以吃的一块真的巧克力，只不过它变小了。因为当拍摄一个东西的时候，比如说我拍摄一座大山，在电视屏幕上出现的山会小很多，所以它变小了，并且可以吃，而且那块很大的巧克力还是那块很小的巧克力。现在 Mike TV 觉得它不可能，所以我们来看看这是不是可能的。Impossible! Cried Mike TV. You think so? Said Mr. Wonka. Well, watch this. I shall send a bar of my very best chocolate from one end of this room to another by television. Get ready there. Bring in the chocolate.Immediately, 6 Oompa Loompas marched forward, carrying on their shoulders the most enormous bar of chocolate Charlie had ever seen. It was about the size of the mattress he slept at home. It has to be big, Mr. Wonka explained, because whenever you send something by television, it always comes out much smaller than it was when it went in. Even with ordinary television,When you photograph a big man, he never comes out in your screen any taller than a pencil, does he? Here we go, then. Get ready. No, stop. Hold everything. You dear Mike TV, stand back. You're too close to the camera. There are dangerous rays coming out of that thing. They could break you up into millions of tiny pieces in 1 second. That's why the Oompa Loompas are wearing spacesuits. The suits protect them. All right, that's better. Now then, switch on.现在 Mr. Wonka 把电视打开了，然后测试了一下，待会儿会有一些有趣的结果。One of the Oompa Loompas caught hold of a large switch and pulled it down. There was a blinding flash. The chocolate's gone! Shouted Grandpa Joe, waving his arms. He was quite right. The enormous bar of chocolate had disappeared completely into thin air.It's on its way, cried Mr. Wonka. It is now rushing through the air above our heads in a million tiny pieces. Quick, come over here. He dashed over to the other end of the room where the large television set was standing. The others followed him. Watch the screen, he cried. Here it comes. Look. The screen flickered and lit up. Then suddenly, a small bar of chocolate.appeared in the middle of the screen. Take it! Shouted Mr. Wonka, growing more and more excited. How can you take it? Asked Mike TV, laughing. It's just a picture on the television screen. Charlie Bucket! Cried Mr. Wonka. You take it. Reach out and grab it. Charlie put out his hand and touched the screen, and suddenly, miraculously, the bar of chocolate came away in his fingers.He was so surprised he nearly dropped it. Eat it! Shouted Mr. Wonka. Go on and eat it. It'll be delicious. It's the same bar. It's gotten smaller on the journey, that's all. 这个 TV 很神奇，但是当一个人进 TV 的时候就不神奇了。待会儿 Mike TV 进去了以后 ，Mike TV 他因为喜欢电视，控制不住自己。然后呢，他就跑到了摄像头前面，结果自己被 TV 显示出来了。他的妈妈和爸爸抓住了他，但是 Mike TV 出来了。虽然 Mike TV 出来了，但是他现在是比铅笔还小的 Mike TV。现在 Mrs. TV 和 Mr. TV 他 Mike TV 的父母，他们呢去由 Oompa Loompa 带着去一个 stretching room， 就是把小的水果使劲拉，然后变大，让它挤出更多的果汁儿。 然后结果 Mike TV 最后变成了一个3米多高的像绳子一样瘦的男孩，然后他们就回家了。现在只剩查理了。Mr. Wonka 带着查理和查理的爷爷，他们继续往前走了。最后，惊人的事情发生了。Mr. Wonka 带着查理进了玻璃电梯以后，他问查理：“查理，你喜不喜欢我的工厂？”查理说：“太喜欢了，这个工厂就是个奇迹。” Mr. Wonka 说：“好，我很高兴听到你说。现在我有一个非常重要的决定，我要把这整个 factory 给你，你会成为这个 Oompa-Loompas 和所有工厂的管理人。你会拥有所有的财产，你会拥有所有的巧克力，你会拥有这个工厂。”然后查理和他的爷爷惊讶地站在那儿。然后 Mr. Wonka 摁了几个按钮以后，电梯就开始一直往上，一直往上。结果砰，他们离开地球表面了。工厂屋顶上出了一个大洞。然后 Mr. Wonka 把电梯开到了查理住处上面，然后把他的家庭接去了。从此查理和他的家庭就住在这个巧克力工厂了，并且他们最后变得很富很富。The end.